Hello everyone. So this is second video in series of our discussion on state legislature. The first video on state legislature has already been delivered. If you remember, we were discussing part 6 of Indian Constitution, and as part of our discussion on part 6 of Indian Constitution, we already have delivered to another lecture, that was chapter of governor and chapter of chief minister. The third chapter we have delved into, that is state legislature. The first video has already been released. So let us see what is going to be scope for this second video. So in this second video, there are two items that we are going to discuss. So the first item will be the presiding officer of both the houses. In unicameral legislature, you have these only two layers of the presiding officer. If the state is of bicameral legislature, that is, if the state does have legislative assembly and legislative council both, then it will have this chairman and deputy chairman as well. So the first item will be that we will discuss the presiding officer of both the houses, and the second item would be the legislative process, that how does a bill starts from drafting and it goes on to governor, and in some cases if governor chooses a particular bill for the presidential assent, then it will go to the president as well. So all this legislative process and the presiding officer will discuss. If I further break up this presiding officer, so in legislative assembly you will find that you will have these three presiding officer, three layers of the presiding officer. You will have speaker, then deputy speaker, and then panel of chairmen. This P should be removed. So panel of chairman of the legislative assembly. So these three presiding officer, or three classes of presiding officer, to be very correct, right? And then in legislative council you will have this chairman, deputy chairman of the legislative council. Another class would also be there, and that will be this panel of vice chairman, vice chairman. So these all presiding officer we are going to study, and then we will study this legislative process. Now, as already we have defined in the state legislature itself, that to attend this lecture on the state legislature, the prerequisite is parliament videos. So if you have not watched those parliamentary chapter, I strongly urge that you go and watch those parliamentary videos, or at least have a reading of this parliamentary chapter, because the approach that we have taken to cover this state legislature is entirely different. And to avoid this duplication of effort, to avoid the wastage of yours and mine time as well, we are not concentrating on those areas or those parts of the, so for example, when we are discussing the speaker, parts of the speaker, or appointment method of the speaker, or removal of the speaker, right, whatever similarity that it does share, right? So the removal method of the speaker does have slight difference from the removal method of the speaker of the Lok Sabha. So that area we'll discuss, but when it will come to the parts of the speaker, so parts of the speaker that Lok Sabha does enjoy with respect to the Lok Sabha, similar power is enjoyed by the speaker of legislative assembly as well. So I'll simply give a go by to those kind of provision. When we'll discuss the appointment method of the speaker, rather I will not discuss, that is the suggestion that I am giving you. So appointment method of speaker is completely same as the appointment method of the speaker at the Lok Sabha. The only difference will be of president and governor, right? So in pro tem speaker, you will see that pro tem speaker of the Lok Sabha is appointed by the president, but the pro tem speaker of the legislative assembly will be appointed by the governor. So only that difference will be pointed out as far as method of appointment, who will be appointed pro tem speaker in the legislative assembly. Like if you remember, in Lok Sabha it was the senior most member of parliament who was to be appointed pro tem speaker, right? So similar fashion, senior most MLA will be appointed pro tem speaker by the governor. So this deviation, that here you had this president and here you had this governor, what is the job of pro tem speaker, what is the role of the speaker, what is the role of deputy speaker, how it's what you call salary is charged on the consolidated. So all these kind of things, what is the security of tenure, what is the reform to the office of speaker, what are the suggested reforms. So all those area, although the content, the PDF that you guys will get will have all those things, but as far as discussion is concerned, I'll limit my discussion only to the extent of the deviation, right? I hope I have made myself clarified. So again, I am urging you that if you have not watched those lectures on the parliament, this lecture is going to be of no use for you, right? So either you have a reading of the parliament and then come back to this video, or have a watch on this parliamentary video and then only you attend this video. I hope I have clarified myself. Now let us start with this speaker. So if you remember, these are the classes of presiding officer in the legislative assembly, and similar classes of presiding officer you had in the Lok Sabha as well. So first you have this speaker, then next class would be of deputy speaker, and then you have this panel of chairmen, right? And just because I have created this bottom hierarchy, you need not to consider that deputy speaker is anyway accountable to speaker, or panel of chairmen is anyway accountable to deputy speaker and consequently speaker, right? These all classes of presiding officer is ultimately accountable only to one body, that is legislative assembly. And similarly at the central level, these people, speaker, deputy speaker and panel of, here the difference in the Lok Sabha was that instead of panel of chairmen, they were called panel of chairpersons. Panel of chairpersons. So all these classes of the presiding officer in the parliament were directly accountable to the Lok Sabha rather than being accountable to each other, like deputy speaker being, although as far as resignation is concerned, when speaker is resigning, he or she will address his resignation letter to the deputy speaker, and when deputy speaker is resigning, then deputy speaker will address his resignation to the speaker. But as far as ultimate accountability is concerned, their eventual accountability is to the house and not to each other, right? It is just for your convenience that I have created this post of speaker, deputy speaker, not created means put up the speaker in this manner, right? I hope I have made myself clear on this point. The next point that needs to be emphasized is that these two classes of the presiding officer, that is speaker and deputy speaker, these people are elected by the house amongst its member, but these people, the third class of presiding officer, that is panel of chairmen, are not elected, rather they are nominated. And who nominates them? It is the speaker who is going to nominate them. If you remember at the Lok Sabha, when we were discussing this panel we are talking about, so it will have more than one member, right? So at the Lok Sabha level, Lok Sabha had been Lok Sabha had been empowered to have 10 members on this panel. So up to 10 members could have been on this panel of chairpersons at the Lok Sabha. And mind you, again I am saying chairperson because I am talking about Lok Sabha. At the assembly level, this is called panel of chairmen, and because the size of each assembly may vary from this 60 to 500, right? So you will notice that smaller assembly may have only two panel of two member of legislative assembly on this panel of chairman, while the larger states like UP you have 403, then you have West Bengal 288, Maharashtra 294 here, Maharashtra 288. So these bigger states may have more than 10 as well. Another difference that needs to be made, that these two posts are mentioned directly into the constitution, but as far as this panel of chairmen is concerned, this panel of chairmen is regulated by the rules of procedure. This class of presiding officer is not mentioned directly into the constitution. So I hope you would be clear on the differences between the speaker, deputy speaker, panel of chairman, although we'll have a discussion, but the main point, these points had not actually been discussed so specifically into the parliamentary chapter when we were discussing this speaker and deputy speaker. So I thought of adding these points. So at parliamentary level as well, if you remember when we were discussing the speaker and deputy speaker, even at the parliamentary level, right, these two posts had not been had been defined directly into the constitution, but this class of presiding officer, that was panel of chairpersons of the Lok Sabha, had not been defined into the constitution, right? I hope that point would be clear to you. If I talk about the presiding officer into the legislative council, so these are the presiding officer into the legislative council, and this is applicable only to those state which does have bicameral legislature, that is legislative assembly and legislative council. Only 6 state I guess does have this legislative council. So these classes of presiding officer will be applicable only to the legislative council or the state which does have that legislative council. So in response to speaker, you have this chairman, deputy chairman and panel of vice chairman. You have panel of chairman into the legislative assembly. Here you have panel of vice chairman into the legislative council. Similarly, these two classes are mentioned directly into the constitution, but this is in rules of procedure of particular house, that is legislative council, right? So I hope the difference between these two classes of presiding officer and ultimate, here as well this deputy chairman is not accountable directly to the chairman, although he addresses his resignation letter to the chairman and this chairman to the deputy chairman, but their accountability is toward the legislative council and not to each other. Similarly, this panel of chairman will also be nominated and not be elected, nominated by chairman and not by the house, right? Generally, when we talk about nomination, wrong statement can be designed by in the prelim, right? That this panel of vice chairman, logically it may be correct, but from the rules of procedure it is not correct. These people, this panel of vice chairman in legislative council and this panel of chairman in legislative assembly are nominated and not by the house but by the speaker here and by the chairman here, right? I hope this point would have been clear. Now we are moving to the next slide to discuss the presiding officer of the legislative assembly. Rather, first we will discuss the sequence of event that happens that starts with the appointment of the pro tem speaker and thereafter goes on to this panel of nomination of panel of chairman. So first we will discuss the classes of presiding officer in the legislative assembly, and thereafter we will discuss the classes of presiding officer of the legislative council. And again the same wording that we will not discuss these things in the detail, only the deviation. So in the speaker's power, the speaker appointment method, in the appointment method only changes that the only change is in removal procedure, and we will discuss that only removal process. As far as reform to the office, as far as his appointment method, as far as powers are concerned, all those are same. So here we will spend less number of minutes when you compare the time that we had spent while discussing the speaker of the Lok Sabha at the parliamentary level, right? So let us discuss the sequence of event that is followed into the legislative assembly while electing or nominating these classes of presiding officers. So let us start discussing with respect to the legislative assembly. So first, after the election result has been announced, see, if you remember in the parliament chapter we had discussed that the previous speaker does not vacate the office until election result has been announced. So after the election result has been announced, immediately before the first constitution or the first meeting of the legislative assembly at the central level, immediately before the first meeting of the Lok Sabha, the previous speaker is going to vacate the office. Similarly, here as well, previous speaker vacates the office first after the election, announcement of the election, and immediately before the first sitting of the legislative assembly. Thereafter, pro tem speaker will be, once this speaker has resigned, then pro tem speaker will be appointed. Thereafter, house will elect speaker, thereafter deputy speaker, and then speaker will nominate this panel of chairman of legislative assembly. So this is the sequence of event that is followed for election or nomination. When I am saying election, I am referring to these two bodies, to these two institutions, that is office of speaker and deputy speaker. When I am talking about nomination, I am talking about this panel of chairman of the legislative assembly, right? I hope that point would, this sequence of event would be clear to you. So we will not discuss all these things, that when does this previous speaker vacates the office, what is the pro tem speaker, what is the role of pro tem speaker, that he appoints newly elected, he administers oath to the newly elected, not appoint, he administers oath to the newly elected member of legislative. What is his role, who he is appointed by, right? He is appointed by governor, right? So all these things will not, because this is almost similar, not almost, means completely similar to what we had discussed into the Lok Sabha with respect to the pro tem speaker of the Lok Sabha. So you have this previous speaker which will vacate office immediately before new MLA first meeting, right? So that is the pro tem speaker, previous speaker. Thereafter pro tem speaker will be appointed. Pro tem speaker will be appointed by whom? So by the governor. Why? Because in article 188 it has been given that newly elected MLAs, right, MLA elect will be administered oath either by the governor or by any person appointed by the governor. So governor generally does not directly administer, although in constitution, as per constitution, if the spirit of constitution is to be followed, governor has been empowered that he can directly administer the oath to the member of legislative assembly. Similarly, Lok Sabha MPs can be directly administered oath by the president, but president and governor, as a matter of custom or a practice has developed, that they generally appoint, because in the same article the provision has been made that either governor or any person appointed by the governor should administer oath. So under this provision that has been given under article 188, governor appoints this pro tem speaker. Who will be pro tem speaker? So pro tem speaker will generally be the senior most MLA, and similarly at the Lok Sabha level it will be senior most MP, right? Then office of speaker. So speaker, how he is appointed. So it is almost similar to what you call the speaker at the Lok Sabha. So how does the house elect? So it is the house who is going to elect. What is the qualification? So he should be or she should be MLA. However, knowledge. So all these things. See, I have not made any changes. All the slides has been from the parliament chapter, parliamentary speaker chapter itself, right? The only changes that I had to make was with respect to the article, and wherever it was president, it had been converted to the governor. Wherever it was member of parliament, I have made that replaced with the member of legislative assembly. So only those kind of things has been only those kind of changes has been made. See, the only difference that speaker of Lok Sabha and speaker of assembly does have is as far as method of removal is concerned. So similarity that they do have is that effective majority is necessary, that is for the removal of the speaker. Then in speaker's removal, there will be no role of legislative council, that is upper house. If you remember, in the removal of the speaker at the Lok Sabha level as well, there was no involvement of the Rajya Sabha. Then if resolution is being moved for what you call removal of that speaker, he or she needs to be given 14 days. So that is all similarity. The only difference from the Lok Sabha speaker's removal, right, and this legislative assembly's speaker's removal, the only difference is that if you remember, when you were moving, when member of parliament or a group of member of parliament were intending to move a resolution for Lok Sabha speaker's removal, in that case that resolution, prior to moving even resolution, that resolution needed to have this 50 Lok Sabha's member of parliament support. It can't be that just because 2 or 4 member of parliament is not satisfied with the functioning of the speaker, and they can go to the speaker and can ask that, hey, we are going to move the resolution for your removal. That will be a kind of play with what you call the independent functioning of the office of speaker, right? So that's why a provision has been made at the Lok Sabha level that 50 Lok Sabha's MP need to have in agreement over resolution that yes, the speaker is going beyond the constitution, this speaker is not functioning according to the constitutional principle, he or she is acting in a biased manner. So that was the provision. But at the state level in constitution, there is no such procedure has been mentioned in the constitution that 50 member of legislative assembly needs to support that resolution first, right? Thereafter effective majority se wo remove hoga. So that kind of provision has not been mentioned in the constitution, and perhaps the underlying reason behind would have been because of there are some states where the size of assembly is very small. So there are certain states which does have this assembly sizes of 60. There are rather smaller state which does have assembly size of 40, 46 and 32 as well, right? So in these kind of states, or even if you have this 100 MLAs state or 120 MLAs state, you cannot expect that 50 MLAs, because if the state does have 120 or 100 MLAs, right, the absolute majority will be 50, by which effective majority by which he is removed. So you cannot expect first that 50 MLAs to support the resolution to move her removal process, right, and thereafter a effective majority. So it is because of primarily the smaller size of few assemblies that this provision has not been inserted in the constitution. So that is the only difference, that there is no necessity at the state level to have support of this 50 member of legislative assembly even to move the resolution. Thereafter, for the as far as other aspect of removal of Lok Sabha speaker is concerned, the other aspects are similar to the removal of legislative assembly speaker. As far as the resignation is concerned, speaker resignation like Lok Sabha speaker resignation was being addressed to the deputy speaker. Similarly, legislative assembly speaker will also address his or her resignation to the deputy speaker. Similarly, deputy speaker of the legislative assembly, if has to resign, he or she will address his or her resignation to the speaker. So there is bi-directional addressing. So I hope these points regarding the speaker would be clear to you. Speaker appointment, speaker. One another point, that is salary and allowances of speaker, deputy speaker, chairman, deputy chairman, all these people are charged on the consolidated fund of state, not consolidated fund of India, right? Consolidated fund of state. What is the duties? Who will perform the duties of the speaker when C is absent? So that has been mentioned in the article 180, that duties of the speaker when C is absent. Mind you, there are two situations: when the office is vacate and when C is absent. So the difference of word is absent and vacate. We'll discuss that. So in article 180, it has been mentioned that when speaker is absent, means either due to ill health or temporary leave, if C is absent, then her job will be performed by deputy speaker. If deputy speaker is as well absent due to any reason, so speaker is also absent, deputy speaker is also absent, in that case house does have power that it can decide that who will have that chair, right? So house, and this was similar provision at the Lok Sabha level as well. So House, by their rules of procedure, has decided that there will be something called panel of chairman, and this panel of chairman may have 2 members, 4 members, 10 members, 20 members, depending on the size of that assembly, right? So any of that member that has been nominated, how this member will be, whether they will be elected or nominated. So this panel of chairman will be nominated by whom? Speaker, right? So that whenever speaker or deputy speaker is absent from their offices, any of these members, so suppose 8 member has been nominated on this panel of chairman. So when speaker and deputy speaker is absent, in that case any member of this 8, right, can preside on the office of can preside on the chair and can see the functioning of the assembly. I hope this point would be clear to you. Now another under same article, that is article 180, it has been given that when office of speaker is vacant, either due to resignation or death, then deputy speaker will perform the job of this speaker. And in case coincidentally, if speaker's office and deputy speaker office is vacated at the same time, so suppose speaker has died and deputy speaker has resigned, or deputy speaker has died and speaker has resigned, so both the offices, if at any situation, if both the offices gets vacated due to any permutation and combination, then governor can appoint any member of legislative assembly, any MLA, to chair this office of speaker, to chair the house until the house chooses new speaker and new deputy speaker, right? So I hope this difference between this word vacate and absent, when members speaker and deputy speaker is absent, in that case house does have power that who will sit on that chair, but when these offices are vacant, right, in that case governor has been empowered. This point I had emphasized in the Lok Sabha chapter as well, because generally I have seen the tendency among aspirants on not concentrating on such kind of points. So that's why, although from the logic that I already had pointed out, that I'll not be discussing all those points that I already have discussed, but because this was needed to be emphasized, that's why I discussed those. As far as parts of the speaker, again need not to be discussed, because I did not edit anything. This is similar part that is enjoyed by the legislative Lok Sabha speaker, right? So similar power will be enjoyed by the Lok Sabha assembly as well. It's just that Lok Sabha speaker does enjoy all these power with respect to the Lok Sabha members, member of parliament, and Lok Sabha as a house. All these powers are enjoyed by the speaker of legislative assembly with respect to legislative assembly as a house and member of legislative assemblies, right? So I hope these powers also you will have go through, right? What are the powers we already have discussed. Then you have this Kitohalan case in 1993, which had declared that power of the speaker in relation to the anti-defection, that is schedule 10. So if any a member of legislative assembly has been disqualified or is not being disqualified in both the situation, if he has been wrongly disqualified or if he is not being in a partition manner, party has already recommended that he should be disqualified, right? But speaker, due to political expediency to benefit this ruling party, a speaker is not disqualified. In both these situations, you will see that judiciary in 1993 has given the judgment that the opinion or the decisions of speaker in relation to the anti-defection or the disqualification of MP, here it should have been MLA, because this case was relevant for Lok Sabha member of parliament, Rajya Sabha member of parliament, and it is equally relevant for member of legislative assembly as well, and powers of speaker at the legislative assembly level as well, right? So this kind of decision under schedule 10, the speaker, when he or she does take these kind of decision on schedule 10, right, his or her decision will not remain immune from the judicial review, right? So that was one point, that was one interference in the powers of the speaker by the judiciary. Then why speaker needs to be impartial, what is the necessity, how it is related with the office dignity of the office of speaker. Then case study we had done at the central level, if you remember, right, that how, at what instances, what are the situation in which speaker is compelled, rather even if he or she is not wanting to be biased, right, there are certain situation which compels him or her to be biased. So what situation or what provision, what are the constitutional provision that we do have in constitution as well, so constitutional provision to maintain the impartiality of the speaker. So his speaker's salary and allowances are charged on the Consolidated Fund of India in case of Lok Sabha, and his salary and allowances are charged on the Consolidated Fund of State, right? So that cannot be voted upon, right? So there are various provisions that the constitution, we already have discussed all these points. So there are various provisions that the constitution has already made to ensure the independent functioning of the office of speaker, but there are certain reform that is necessary again to ensure, considering the functioning of office of speaker in last 72 years, it is necessary that we align those recommendation of various committees and commission to ensure that this office remains independent, right? So what are the suggested reforms, how we should how we need to copy the model of United Kingdom in relation to the office of speaker, how they have ensured, how they have made sure that the speaker, as soon she joins this office, or as soon a member of legislative assembly or member of parliament is asked to join this office of speaker, he or she needs to resign from party membership. There are certain other provision as well in United Kingdom that has made sure that this office of speaker remains impartial. All these points we already have discussed, right? So you need to have you need to go through that video, right? So reform to the office of speaker. As far as deputy speaker, again, so the method of election of deputy speaker, that he or she shall be elected by the house after the house has elected the speaker. Simple majority. The only deviation from the deputy speaker's power or deputy speaker election method or removal method, right? Only deviation from the Lok Sabha deputy speaker and this assembly deputy speaker, the only deviation is this, that at the Lok Sabha level, generally, and I am saying generally, deputy speaker was supposed to be from opposition member of parliament, right, at the Lok Sabha. But again, there as well, this was norm and not the constitutional provision. But that at the state level, you will notice most of the time, this ruling party MLA only will be deputy speaker. So I had googled it in UP, in Haryana, or in other state, most of the state as well, right, you will notice that the deputy speaker post also goes to the ruling party. But that is not the norm, or that is not the practice that is followed at the Lok Sabha right now. Although our deputy speaker post is vacant, it has not been given by the ruling party to any of the opposition member, but whenever it will go. But again, that is also not, means even if Lok Sabha example we are taking, that there you had this deputy speaker post going to the opposition, but there as well it is not a constitutional foundation, it is just a political norm that has been created, that if of a speaker just to maintain the impartiality of that chair, it has been a political convention has been created that okay, speaker is going to the ruling, office of speaker is going to the ruling party, then office of deputy speaker should go to this opposition member. So that is again pointer that is just political convention, established political convention, and not a constitutional provision. But at the state level, openly this office of deputy chairman, deputy speaker as well is given to the party which is dominant and not the opposition. Other things as far as role of deputy speaker, powers of deputy speaker, removal method of the deputy speaker is same as that of the deputy speaker of the Lok Sabha, so that we are not getting into, right, you already know all those things. As far as panel of chairman of the Legislative Assembly is concerned, what is his role, we already know, because we already have discussed panel of chairpersons of the Lok Sabha. So we are not getting in. The only difference between the panel of chairman of Legislative Assembly and panel of chairpersons of the Lok Sabha, the only difference is this in green, that in Lok Sabha there was provision that up to 10 members could be on this panel of chairpersons of the Lok Sabha. And mind you, again I am creating the difference that there this class of presiding officer was panel of chairpersons of the Lok Sabha, but here the name is panel of chairman of Legislative Assembly. So at the Lok Sabha there was provision that Lok Sabha could have up to 10 members on this panel of chairpersons, but because again the assembly size can be smaller, so in this case there is no such rule that any particular assembly need to have this on this panel 10 members, right. That will be guided totally by the rules of procedure of that particular house, that how many members they want to have on this particular panel, right. What will be his role, in what situation his role will come into play, all those points would be clear to you. One thing that I want to emphasize again, because that is also ignored by aspirants generally, and that one point here is, but that will be repetition again, that opposed to the traditional understanding. See, when this office becomes vacant, this speaker and deputy speaker, and mind you I am saying this office becomes vacant, right. So when speaker and deputy speaker office become vacant, then panel of chairperson, panel of chairman will also not stay alive, they will also have to go, because it was the speaker who had nominated this panel of chairman, right. So when speaker and deputy speaker is not there, this panel of chairmen cannot function. As soon the house has chosen a new speaker, right, speaker will nominate a new panel of chairmen, right. So general tendency would have been, general, if we go by the logic, right, if we move by the logic, our logic can be that okay, when speaker is absent, deputy speaker assumes charges, and when speaker and deputy speaker is also absent, in that case, sorry, their offices are vacant. See, as far as absence is concerned, when speaker and deputy speaker are absent, in that case this panel of any of the member from the panel of chairman can preside over the chair, but when their offices are vacant, in that case they cannot function. I hope that difference would be clear to you. Now we are moving to the next presiding officer. So these three classes of presiding officer of the Legislative Assembly would be clear to you. Now we are moving to the next class of presiding officer, and that is chairman of the Legislative Council, right. So Legislative Council. So in Legislative Council as well you have three classes of presiding officer, that is chairman, deputy chairman, and panel of vice chairman, right? So if you remember, in response to the legislative council, that is upper house, at the parliamentary level you have this Rajya Sabha. So at the Rajya Sabha, it was vice president who used to be ex officio chairman of this Rajya Sabha. But in response to this vice president, we do not have any vice governor at the state level, right, who could be ex officio chairman of this legislative council or upper house. And that's why vice president who used to be ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha, this is not the option, because we do not have this vice governor, and that's why you will notice the chairman of the legislative council will be elected by the house amongst its members, right? So that is the only change as far as chairman or chairman's power or chairman election method is concerned. So the only change as far as chairman of the Rajya Sabha and chairman of the legislative council, otherwise all the functions, his removal, her removal method is almost same. So we are not getting into that, right? So now I hope this chairman of the legislative council would be clear to you. Now we are moving to the next slide to see the deputy chairman of the legislative council. So as far as deputy chairman of the legislative council is concerned, everything, be it appointment method, appointing majority, or removal method, his function, role is almost similar. So we are not discussing this deputy chairman of legislative council as well. As far as panel of vice chairman, that is third class of presiding officer of legislative council is concerned, right? So the only change between the panel of at the Rajya Sabha is concerned, right, because equivalent of legislative council is Rajya Sabha. So the name difference would be there. If you remember here, there you had this panel of chairpersons of the Rajya Sabha. So but here you have panel of vice chairman of the legislative council. So the only difference between this panel of chairmen of the legislative council and panel of chairpersons of the Rajya Sabha is of this number of members that could be on the panels. Again, the reason that we had cited in the legislative assembly, that because the size of legislative assembly was smaller than the legislative Lok Sabha, right, and legislative assembly size could vary from 60 to 500. Similarly, legislative council size is also not equivalent to the Rajya Sabha at the central level, and so the provision has been given to various states that they could their house rules could decide that how many members could be on their panel. So there is no consistency, because at the central level you have only one upper house, but that is not the case at the state level. You have different state, you have these 6 states which does have this legislative council, and all those 6 states does have varying number of member of legislative council in their legislative council, right? So that is the only difference. As far as other provision, other immunities, other features of this panel of vice chair men of the legislative council is concerned, is almost same. So I hope although we have covered this presiding officer of the legislative assembly and legislative council not in detail, just deviation has been dealt, right, but still I expect that because you already have a base on the parliamentary lecture, right, and you would also not like your time to be wasted. So all those points regarding the presiding officer would be clear. Now we are going to discuss the types of bills in the state legislative assemblies and legislative council. So this image is from your parliamentary chapter. So if you remember, except this subcategorization, so if you remember this money bill, as far as this picture is concerned, you had another picture where you had this finance bill, and as subcategorization of this finance bill you had this money bill, then financial bill of type 1 and financial bill of type 2. Somebody subcategorized it as financial bill of category A and financial bill of category B, right? So just for the purpose of simplification, I have not done this. So further subcategorization, I have just put up this money bill. So you have this ordinary bill, you have this money bill, then you have repealing bill, then you have consolidating bill. Another subcategorization you can create is amending bill, right? So all these kind of bill broadly state can enact, right? So what is this ordinary bill, what is this money, what is this repealing, what is this consolidating, and another subcategorization can be amending bill. So what is this amending bill? I am not going to clarify it because I presume that you already have gone through the parliamentary chapter, so there is no point of duplicating our effort here as well by explaining all these things. Why I have put up this thing, constitutional amendment bill, in the red because in India, state does not have power to initiate any constitutional amendment. If there is any constitutional amendment that state wants to initiate or state want to amend, right, they cannot, they have not been empowered constitutionally to initiate any kind of amendment to the constitutional amendment bill. Only union, only parliament is empowered to initiate any such bill, and that's why this option has been put up in red. So except this constitutional amendment bill, state in India has been given power to enact any law under these broad categories, right? So I hope the types of bill that can be enacted at the state level would be clear to you. Now we are going to the next slide to discuss the legislative process that is followed while enacting the bill. So this is the image that we had used for explaining you legislative process at the parliamentary level. So I am not getting into the details, I will not get into minutes because minute things has already been explained. And if you remember, just to explain this image we had taken around 30 to 40 minutes around in the parliamentary chapter. So do not expect me to explain this thing here as well, because the same reason it will be a wastage of yours and mine time as well. So what happens in this first reading, what happens in this second reading, what third reading, right? What is the committee stage, why committee stage is important, why, in which situation a bill is sent to the committee. So all those things in detail we have already clarified. Here I'll just let you know the broad flow of the legislative process from drafting to the president, and thereafter we'll see that what happens at the state level, means logically. So suppose there are two houses, not suppose, actually there are two houses at the parliamentary level, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. And right now while discussing this legislative process, we will discuss the flow of the ordinary bill, right? We will not be concerned about the money bill that you saw, because money bill's legislative process is little difficult and little complex. There are certain condition or there are certain deviation that happens at the money bill. What are the deviations? So money bill can be introduced only in the Lok Sabha. It can be introduced in Lok Sabha by minister only with the prior approval of the president. So right now the legislative process that we are going to discuss at the central level, and then we will compare from the state level, right? So that that bill will be of ordinary in nature. So let us see what legislative process a ordinary bill follows at the central level, at the parliamentary level, right? So ordinary bill can originate in any of the house, either in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. So let us say that whatever the first house in which a bill, ordinary bill originated, let us call that house as originating house. Once the originating house passes the bill will be sent to the next house. Let us call that house as second house. So this house will be called first house. Let us refer this originating house as first house, and let us refer the other house in which after having been passed from the first house, the bill will be sent to the second house. Now what happens in the second house? So second house does have multiple options. This house has already, the originating house or the first house is already passed, right? Now if the second house also passes the bill in the format, in the same format that was sent by first house, then it will be sent to the president. Other option that the second house, besides passing this bill in the format that was agreed by the first house, the other option the second house does have, that it can suggest any kind of amendment, right? So it may not like all the provision that had been suggested by the originating house. It may like that, okay, one provision, it may like that one provision maybe should be added by us as well, or one or two provisions should be deleted that has already been passed by the originating house. In that case, if suppose second house proposes some kind of amendment, some kind of addition, some kind of deletion of existing provision, in that case, because see, the first house that has passed the bill, that had passed the bill in this format. Now second house is seeking some kind of amendment, either addition or deletion. In that case, the bill has to be sent to the first house again to approve or to reject this amendment. So when it will be sent to the originating house again, that is this house, this house does have again two options. It can either accept the amendment that has been proposed by the second house. In that case, if the originating house accepts the amendment that has been proposed by this second house, in that case bill will be sent to the president. I hope that point will be clear to you. Now, the second option, in that case, in case where amendment has been proposed by the second house, the second option the originating house does have is that it may not agree to these addition or deletion. It might say that no, we are not agreeing to any kind of suggestion that has been made by the second house. Now, that will be situation of deadlock. Constitutionally, this is called situation of deadlock, where first house passed the bill in particular format, second house is not agreeing, second house suggested some kind of amendment, it was sent to the first house and first house is not agreeing to the amendment moved by the second house, and that situation is called situation of deadlock. Now, at the parliament, and mind you, again I am repeating myself that we are discussing right now what is happening at the parliamentary level, right? We are still to come at the state level. What legislative process that will be followed at the state level, we are yet to come, right? So, that situation where the first house has refused to accede to the amendment that has been suggested by the second house, that situation will be situation of deadlock. Now, in constitution, to resolve this deadlock, there is a provision in article 108 whereby both these houses, right? So, what is the situation? Situation is that it is suggesting some amendment, this house is not agreeing to those amendments. Now, under article 108, to resolve this situation of deadlock, the provision has been made that both the houses will be called jointly. Hey, come, can you come, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, can you come for a joint sitting? And in that joint sitting, those contentious points, right, those amendment that was suggested by the second house and is not agreeable to the first house, right, that will be discussed and thereafter it will be voted upon, right? And depending on the outcome of that voting by the joint sitting of both the houses, right, that will be decided whether that bill stands passed or not passed. Even after the joint sitting, if the bill is not passed, then bill will stand rejected. If the result of joint sitting is that bill was passed, thereafter it will be sent to president, and president, depending on power that he does have under article 811, article 1111, I hope you still remember, because with this article we had discussed in 2 chapters, that was president and parliament, right? So, I am not getting, so actually under article 1111, president does have multiple power in relation to the bills that has been sent to a president's office after passing by Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, right? So, that was my point, and that was the what you call broad legislative process that is followed at the parliamentary level. Now, there are certain deviation that happens. So, this was the normal legislative process at the parliament. There are certain deviation that happens at the state level. Deviation, see, what did you notice at the parliamentary level? The noticeable feature was that both the houses, be it Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha, both the houses does have equivalent power with respect to the ordinary bill, right? If Rajya Sabha originated a particular bill and it's sent to the Lok Sabha for passing, and if Lok Sabha is not agreeing to the Rajya Sabha's bill, it is suggesting some kind of amendment and Rajya Sabha is not agreeing, in that case as well a provision of joint sitting is available, right? And suppose another case can be that in Lok Sabha a bill originated, it was sent to the Rajya Sabha sought to have some amendment, Lok Sabha is not agreeing, even in that situation there will be joint sitting, right? The point is, the noticeable point is that both the houses at the parliamentary level with respect to the ordinary bill has been empowered enough, and there is piracy of power, there is equivalence of power between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha with respect to the ordinary bill. Yes, of course, when it comes to the money bill, Rajya Sabha does have limited power, but as far as constitutional amendment bill and ordinary bill is concerned, you will notice that Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha does have equal power. But at the state level, we will discuss. Right now, I am just drawing the conclusion. At the state level, you have 2 houses. Some state, rather 22 state does have only 1 house, but there are 6 state which does have 2 houses. You have legislative assembly and you do have legislative council. So, we are right now talking about those state which does have both the houses. So, you will notice that even with respect to the ordinary bill, we will discuss that, right? You need not to worry. Right now, we are just driving the conclusion based on the legislative process of the parliament, right? So here at the parliamentary level, you notice that Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha does have equal power, but you will notice when we will discuss the flow of the bill or the legislative process at the state level, you will notice that legislative council does have limited power even with respect to the ordinary bill, right? About the money bill, we were already clarified that Rajya Sabha, that is upper house, will always have restrained power or limited power. So with money bill, legislative council was also expected because we are following parliamentary. So that point was understood that with respect to the money bill, legislative council, that is unelected house, right, they will have limited power. But with respect to the ordinary bill, it was expected that because we are following what you call parliamentary system, and Rajya Sabha at the parliamentary level does have equal power with the Lok Sabha in relation to the ordinary bill. So it was expected that legislative council, that is upper house at the state level, will also enjoy equivalent power vis-a-vis legislative assembly, but that option has not been given. You will notice that legislative council does have limited power with respect to even ordinary bill, right? So that is one point, that legislative council does have limited power in vis-a-vis legislative assembly. So that was first point. The second difference is that here in situation of deadlock at the parliamentary level under Article 108, a provision has been made that with respect to in situation of deadlock, right, there will be a provision of joint sitting, but you will find that at a state level, number 2 conclusion here, number 2 learning is that with respect to the state bill, states at the state level, there is no provision of joint sitting at the state level. And why there is no provision of joint sitting at the state level, we'll discuss that. See, at the state level, you have these two houses, legislative assembly and legislative council. Legislative assembly has been made powerful to the extent that there is no situation of deadlock that will occur. The situation of deadlock, it was occurring at the parliamentary level because Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha were equally powerful as far as treatment to the ordinary bill was concerned. But here you will see that even with respect to the ordinary bill, legislative council does not have power to create a situation of deadlock, right? And that's why there will be no situation of deadlock that will occur with respect to the ordinary bill. No situation of deadlock, you will notice. And when there is no situation of deadlock, what is the necessity of calling this joint sitting at the state level? Because legislative assembly has been made. How this legislative assembly has been made powerful, we'll see when we'll discuss the legislative process. So from this normal legislative flow at the parliamentary level, the two learning for the state level or the two deviation at the state level is that the first is that the joint sitting, there is no provision of joint sitting, and the second is that the legislative council is a weaker house vis-a-vis equivalent Rajya Sabha or equivalent upper house at the central level. So these are two learning or these are two deviation that you can call. So all the information that we just discussed, these informations are same in the textual format. So Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha has equal power with respect to ordinary bill or with respect to bills, exception is money bills, right? You already know that with respect to the money bill, Rajya Sabha does have limited power. It can just suggest the amendment. It is entirely incumbent on Lok Sabha whether it agrees to that amendment or not. Also, Rajya Sabha can hold that money bill only for 14 days. So that is the limit. So except that money bill, Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha are a equal house. But this equivalence of power in legislative affair between legislative assembly and legislative council has not shared at the state level. Legislative assembly is more powerful than legislative council at the state level. And right now again I am warning you that we are driving the conclusion. We will see that why and how this legislative assembly is more powerful. Why we are calling that legislative assembly is more powerful. There is no provision of joint sitting as we do have had under Article 108 at the parliamentary level, right? You do not have provision of this joint sitting at the state level to solve or to resolve the situation of deadlock in matters of bill. But at the same time, Constitution has also ensured that the situation of deadlock rarely occur by empowering assembly vis-a-vis legislative council. So the same point, repetition, that assembly, legislative assembly has been empowered to the extent at the state level that legislative council does not have power to create the situation of deadlock. I hope this textual point would also be clear to you. Now we are going to discuss the normal legislative flow of any particular bill, right? So this was the normal legislative flow at the central level. So you had this first house. Once the first house passes the bill, it will be sent to the second house. Once the second house passes the bill, then it will be sent to the president for his assent, right? So because we are following the parliamentary level, parliamentary form of government, so at the state level this would have been the flow, right? So first house passes the bill, second house passes the bill. So instead of president, you have governor at the state level. It would have gone to the governor, and governor would have sold or assented or rejected depending on the power that he has been given under Article 200, Article 200. But there is one additional power that this governor has been empowered with, right? And under Article 201, besides the power to assent the act, besides the power to pocket that act, and besides other power that has been given to the president under Article 111, there is one more power, one additional power that has been given to the governor, and that additional power is that the governor does have power that besides assenting, besides rejecting the bill, besides pocketing the veto, right, there is the fourth power. And the fourth power is that he can reserve any bill that if there is any bill that in his opinion is violating fundamental right, if in his opinion, if there is any bill that is violating DPSP, if there is any bill that is against this interstate trade, or if there is any bill that is endangering the position of the High Court, then governor can reserve that particular bill for the presidential approval. So there is, see, at the central level, at the parliamentary level, you have only three layers: first house, second house, president. But at the state level, with respect to the state bill, governor has been empowered that he can send any of the state bill if that state bill is violating fundamental right or DPSP, then he can reserve that particular bill for the presidential approval. See, there are certain nuances that we discussed, right? All the bills cannot, the governor cannot reserve all the bill. There are certain situations in which governor has to necessarily, so they understand the difference. There are certain kind of bill under Article 304, or if it is endangering the position of the High Court, then in that case governor can, not only governor can, but governor must reserve that bill for the president. But there are situations where fundamental, if in his opinion fundamental right is being violated by any of the state bill, or DPSP is being violated, then in these kind of situation you will notice that governor has been given discretion. He will decide whether that bill has to. So there are certain nuances, and this nuances has already been talked in the governor's chapter, and that's why I am not discussing that point. So I hope this flow of the bill at the central level and at the state level, that how it originates in the first house and then goes on to governor, and how it originates in the first house and goes on to president, would be clear to you, and the difference also will be clear to you. Now we are moving to the next slide and discuss the legislative process when a bill originates in the legislative assembly, what legislative process and what are the options the other house does have, and when a bill originates into the legislative council, understand the difference. Now we are going to differentiate that what treatment or what flow a bill will be subjected to when it originates into the legislative assembly and when it originates into the legislative council. So here in this image we will clarify that what will happen to the bill when it originates into the legislative assembly and when it originates into the legislative council, and then we'll compare the parts of the legislative assembly, and then we'll compare the parts of the legislative council, that what difference does it make, right? At the central level there was no difference, whether it is originating into the Lok Sabha, whether it was originating into the Rajya Sabha, there was no difference, because both the houses were equally powerful with respect to the ordinary bill. But here it is going to make the difference. So that difference we are going to see. So let us see, suppose a bill originated into the so first case we are going to see where a bill is originating into the Legislative Assembly. Now when a bill originates into the Legislative Assembly and Legislative Assembly passes that bill, Legislative Council, and it is sent to the Legislative Council, that is upper house, then Legislative Council has all these options, these 4 options. It can straight away pass that bill in the format in which Legislative Assembly had sent to it. In that case, no issues, it will be sent to the governor, and governor will exercise his power that has been extended to the governor under Article 200. That is about, see, Article 200 is nothing. See, I can let you know that what are the options that governor does have, but I already have discussed under Article 20, and why I continuously keep referring only to the article and not to the content of that article, just to let you know that these articles are also important, and these articles you need to memorize, at least those articles which I continuously referring about, right? So if you remember in the previous slide with respect to the presidential power, with respect to the bill that has been sent by the first and second house, I had referred Article 111. So that article was also very important, because that article imparts precedent to either pass the bill or reject that bill or sent for the reconsideration, right? So all those options has been discussed in Article 111. Similar power at the state level has been given to the governor under Article 20, right? So that's why I keep referring to these very important articles. Now coming to this slide, so Legislative Council can pass the bill, good enough, right? It will be sent to the governor, and governor will treat that bill under the power that he has been extended under Article 201. The other 3 options that Legislative Council is that it can reject the bill, it can sit on that bill for 3 months, or it can suggest any kind of amendment, right? So suppose it decides to reject that bill, it is straight away. So suppose Legislative Assembly transmitted this bill to the Legislative Council, and after receiving that bill, 2 days after, that Legislative Council said that no, we are straight away rejecting that bill. In that case, Legislative Assembly will have power that it can re-initiate this bill, right? It can send it to the Legislative Council again. Now this time, the second time when the bill is being sent to the Legislative Council by Legislative Assembly, Legislative Council will have limited power, and it can hold this bill only for 1 month, right? Within 1 month, if it does not passes that bill will be automatically deemed to the pass. The second power is that it can sit on the bill continuously for 3 months. Thereafter, after this 3 months, this bill will automatically be dead, and Legislative Council again will have power to initiate that bill. See, in the first case, within 2 days, 5 days, or within a month, it clarified its stand that okay, we do not approve this bill, we are going to reject that bill. So in that case, immediately after this rejection notice, right, Legislative Assembly can reinitiate that bill. But in this case where Legislative Council is taking no kind of action, so after 3 months has been passed and Legislative Council has not clarified its stand, then Legislative Assembly is empowered to reinitiate that bill. If Legislative Assembly passes the bill again in the same format, again Legislative Council will have limited power with respect to that kind of bill as well, and again they will have only time of 1 month. Within 1 month, if they do not pass the bill, that bill will be automatically deemed to be passed, right? So see, if you remember, if a bill had originated into the Lok Sabha and it was being sent to the Rajya Sabha, and Rajya Sabha, see, the cutoff time at the parliamentary level was 6 months, right, not 3 months. So that is the one difference. And the second difference is that here in this case, suppose Rajya Sabha decided to sit on that bill for 6 continuous months. Thereafter, Lok Sabha could not reinitiate the bill, rather there was provision of joint sitting, right? But here Legislative Assembly has been empowered that they can reinitiate the bill, and that's why this provision of joint sitting that has been given to the parliament at under article 108 has not been extended to the state assemblies or state legislature, because to resolve this situation of deadlock, the legislative assembly has been empowered to reinitiate the bill in the same format in which it had earlier passed, and it has weakened, this state legislature has been weakened by the constitution itself, that it cannot create this situation of deadlock. I hope my point. It can, if it rejects, it can reinitiate. If it sits on that bill ideally for 3 months, it can reinitiate, and that's why there will be no situation of deadlock, and that's why there is no situation of joint sitting under article 108. I hope the point would be clear. Now we are going to discuss the second situation. The second situation, so see, the maximum delay this legislative council can cause is for 4 months, right? So 3 months in the first instance regarding a bill that has been passed by the legislative. So in the first instance it can stop that bill for 3 months, and in the second instance it can stall that bill only for 1 month. So the maximum delay that it can cause legislative council, that is for 4 months, and that's why this legislative council has been called what you call delaying house. That's why this legislative council has been called not the second house, right? If you remember, when we were discussing this legislative council in the first video, we had described it as secondary house, not the second house like Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha at the central level has been described as second chamber, but this house, legislative council, because of less power that it does have vis-a-vis Rajya Sabha, this is also upper house, this is also upper house, but it have reduced power in comparison to the Rajya Sabha, and that's why this is called delaying house. That's why this has been called only secondary house and not the second house. I hope you understand the difference between secondary house and second house, right? So this was the flow of the bill, or this was the treatment to the bill that had originated into the legislative assembly. Now let us see what treatment will be meted out to a bill that originates into the legislative council, right? So suppose a bill originates into the legislative council, and after having been passed by the legislative council, it is sent to the legislative assembly, right? Legislative assembly does have these two options. Legislative assembly can either pass that bill, it will be sent to the governor, or it can straight away say, hey, we are rejecting that bill. In that case, that bill will stand rejected. Let us see. In the first situation, in this situation where bill had originated into the legislative assembly and legislative council chose to reject the bill, in that case the first house, that is legislative assembly in this case, had power to reinitiate the bill. But if in this case where a bill has originated into the legislative council, if the this legislative assembly is saying that we are rejecting that bill, in that case legislative council has not been empowered by the constitution to reinitiate the bill that was in this case. So I hope again this is nothing but this is reflecting the powerfulness, the power or empowered legislative assembly, right? The lower house is empowered to an extent whereby the situation of deadlock cannot be created by the legislative council. I hope the difference between powers of the legislative assembly and legislative council with respect to the bills you would have understood, right? Regards to the money bill, legislative council does have, means as far as money bill is concerned, money bill I will not discuss, because money is similar treatment that money bill gets at the central level, similar treatment it gets at the state level as well. Legislative council does have limited power, it can just suggest the amendment to the legislative assembly. It is completely incumbent on the legislative assembly whether they approve that suggestion or not. Thereafter legislative assembly can stall the money bill only for 14 days, right? So we are not getting into the nitty gritties, because features of all those or treatment of just deviation, the deviation we already have clarified, right? Normal deviation. So I hope that point would be clear to you, right? Legislative process would be clear to you. So once both the houses passes that bill, then it will be sent to the governor. Governor under Article 200 does have all the option, these 4 options. He can pass the bill, bill will become act. He can withhold its bill, right? It is talking about the veto. Then he can send the bill for the reconsideration to the house or houses. Thereafter he can reserve the bill for the assent to the president. Now under Article 201, president does have these power about the presidential veto. This presidential veto under Article 201 we already have discussed in 2 lectures, that is president and the governor. So I hope you already know that president has been given presidential veto even with respect to the state bill under Article 201, because that has already been explained in presidential lecture. So here we are wrapping up this lecture. You do have 4 MCQs, first MCQ, second MCQ, third MCQ and 4 MCQ that I expect you to attempt and comment the answers in the comment section. So till then, bye bye.